a lot of different acronyms that are out there. So I'll try to explain my acronyms as I go along, because I think that's also very important. So what I want to talk to you all about is sustainable aviation fuels. And they are a little bit different than biodiesel. It's different than ethanol. What a sustainable aviation fuel is it's a renewable jet fuel. And renewable fuels are, as most people already know, they are drop-in replacements. So it's not biodiesel, it's not ethanol, but it's a renewable fuel. And that's I think that's one of the more important things to remember about that. So there is a big market that's out there, and I'll get into the demand signals a little bit later on. But this picture here in the first slide here was taken in March of 2016. That was when the first bit of sustainable aviation fuel was put into a United Airlines flight, and it was out of Los Angeles Airport. And so they have a 5 million gallon per year offtake agreement with a company called World Energy. Used to be Altair Fuels, but now World Energy is supplying that fuel to Los Angeles Airport. So since March of 2016, if you have flown through LAX, you have been flying on sustainable aviation fuel. And that's kind of a cool thing. And you'll also note too that you didn't fall out of the sky. There's no problem at all, because they are drop-in replacements. And I think that's the important takeaway from that aspect of it. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go through, I'll go through the slides and describe for you what we're all about. So CAAFI, the Commercial Aviation Alternative Fuels Initiative, it is a public-private partnership, and it is sponsored. We have 4 major sponsors. We have the Aerospace Industries Association, we have FAA, Federal Aviation Administration, the Airports Council International, and Airlines for America, A4A. So we have those major sponsors. FAA is the major one that we work for, and so they have a number of different initiatives within the energy and environmental area, and because of the reduced greenhouse gas emission profile for sustainable aviation fuels, that's why it falls underneath the environmental area as well too. So the entire U.S. jet market that's out there for jet fuel is over 26 billion gallons per year in use. And worldwide, when you compare it to worldwide, we have within the globe, this is pre-COVID, we were using 90 billion gallons per year in jet fuel. So you can see that there's quite a bit that's out there. And so we're trying to fulfill as much as we can, but we just need to continually work with a lot of the different commercial operators and companies that are out there producing the fuel to get more and more of it if we possibly can. So that's a little bit about what it is. And so CAAFI is out there mainly to enable the commercialization and deployment and use of sustainable aviation fuel. And we're working, when we say enable, we're working across the supply value chain, all the way from the feedstocks. For instance, we might be using used cooking oil. And then we also work with all the technology providers. And then we also working with the end users, which can be the commercial aviation side, but also business aviation is also a big market pull as well too. So I'm just going to briefly go through this definition. Sustainability, obviously, we're addressing the whole greenhouse gas reduction, and we all know aviation fuel. It's just regular jet fuel. It goes by a particular standard, 1655, which is part of the ASTM, which is the American Society of Testing and Materials, part of their standards. And right now there are 7 approved pathways of sustainable aviation fuel. So that's pretty significant if you think about that. And as I mentioned before, it is a drop-in replacement. So when you look at the way that we create these synthetic hydrocarbons, you know, basically it's because it's a drop-in, what I like to say is it's very similar to fossil fuel. But this jet fuel actually comes from, instead of coming from dead dinosaurs, it's coming from used cooking oil or beef tallow, or in some cases, municipal solid waste or wood waste. And I know that there is certainly within the Southeast, there's a lot of potential for wood resources that are out there. So I'll be talking a little bit more about the wood as a feedstock as well. So I have to say that you know, the overall the commercialization activity has been expanding quite a bit, and we continually work with all of the airlines through both Airlines for America for our domestic airlines, but also the international airlines too. So this is not just a United States issue or problem. We are working internationally with a lot of different firms across the globe, because a large part of that is that, yes, we have a lot of domestic flights, but we are a very, we do like to fly a lot of different places around the globe. So we know that there's a lot of multiple activities that are ongoing up and down the supply value chain. As I mentioned, we're working with a lot of feedstock providers. We're working with a lot of technology providers and logisticians in order to get those feedstocks to those companies. And then we're also working on the supply chain and the infrastructure that's required to get it to the airports and to the end user. I mean, we even have, you know, the FedEx and UPS are also in the hunt for using sustainable aviation fuels as well too. So this chart sort of talks a little bit about our way that we are reducing our CO2 emissions, overall greenhouse gas. So if we weren't going to do anything at all, you can see where that red line would have been going up and to the right, we would have had a lot more. But because of efficiencies that we've been able to capture, we've been able to drop that down quite a bit. So we have some savings that we've already achieved. Now through the CORSIA, which is the carbon offsetting reduction scheme for international aviation, we are quite a bit working towards a carbon neutral growth. That's the CNG. Our overall goal 3, is that we want to have a 50% reduction in 2050 based on a baseline from 2005. So those are the three major goals that we've been working on. We're still working on the annual efficiencies across the board too. But when you look at the wedge, that light blue wedge, you can see that one of the major areas that we are going to be using in order to get down or reduce our CO2 emissions is through sustainable aviation fuels. And that's again, both for commercial aviation and business aviation, but we also have the U.S. Department of Defense, DoD, working hand in hand as well on a lot of these different issues as well. So as I mentioned, the CORSIA, this is for international aviation. Right now, we are in the middle of setting a baseline for 2019 and 2020. Now with our situation with COVID and the dramatic cutback in aviation, we probably, and this is going to be up to the International Civil Aviation Organization, a.k.a. They're the ones who are sort of driving the CORSIA internationally. They may just go ahead and go with a 2019 baseline and sort of just delete the 2020, because we're not going to be able to get, we're not going to be able to set a good baseline just because of the current crisis that we're in. So then in 2021 to 2023 is going to be the pilot phase, and then the first phase, 2024 to 2026, and then it will be mandatory after 2027. So in this case, and again, this is just for international aviation, but you know, within the Southeast, we have a lot of airports that do have a lot of international flights coming in and going out. So we all can be a major part of that. So a lot of those airports, a lot of those airlines are going to want to reduce their carbon as much as possible. And so that's why what we're trying to do, trying to build that up, is so very critical. So I want to go through just very quickly here a couple of offtake agreements for sustainable aviation fuel. World Energy out of Paramount, California is one of the ones that I was telling you about before. They're the ones who started with United. And as you can see there, they're 5 million gallons per year from back in 2016. But you can see there in the middle, you can see a lot of different airlines that are there, along with business aviation like Gulfstream down in Savannah, Georgia. And then, you know, we have SAS and Finnair, KLM, the Oslo Airport. So you see a lot of people from across the globe that are working on a lot of these different offtake agreements. Now, basically what those offtake agreements are, in the cases with the people that are there down the left-hand side, they're the ones who are out there signing these offtake agreements so that they can go to the bank and get some money saying, hey, I've got these offtake agreements, I've got some definite funding, some definite income once I get it up and running. Right now, World Energy is one of the only ones that are out there producing it on a full scale right now. But all these other ones are different levels of development to get to that commercial scale. I want to highlight your attention to the bottom red box there, that these offtake agreements total more than 350 million gallons per year. Now remember that we were talking about the U.S. Jet fuel consumption is 26 billion. So 350 million is very, very small amount, but at least it's something. We have to start somewhere. Now, even though we have these offtake agreements of 350 million gallons per year, a lot of that is going unfulfilled, just mainly because a lot of these companies are just not up and running right now. But we do know that that companies like LanzaTech, they have a facility down in Sopperton, Georgia, that they're working on right now, and hopefully in the next 2 years they will be actually producing. So 2023 is what they're planning on, and they'll have about 100 million gallons per year of production from those 4 facilities, one of which is that one that's in Sopperton. So I wanted to just point that out because we're talking about the Southeast. And then we have other recent announcements that are going on across the board from a lot of different companies. And again, we have international aviation that's being a major part of that as well too. And even more so now, and even like I mentioned to you before, the business aviation side, Aviation Fuel up there in the top in the middle, they're the major suppliers for business aviation and corporate jets across the board. So you can see that there's quite a few of those. And then other commitments of greater ambition. You can see here that companies like FedEx and Air France and Qantas, they have these different commitments that they have put in writing to say that they are planning on reducing their carbon, or they have a net zero carbon goal by a certain year. And I think that that's very, very critical to see. What I'm basically, what I'm trying to build here is the fact that there is a huge demand signal for this sustainable aviation fuel. And I want to make sure that everybody is aware of that, you know, this is an up and coming, I'm not going to call it a trend, but it's an up and coming fuel that we want to have out there, you know, throughout the Southeast and throughout the country and throughout the world. So we just need to continually work towards getting there. And then even major countries have also been involved. You can see there Norway, Netherlands, and France. they have also been out there stating what they want to do as well too. World Energy, as I mentioned before, they're the major ones that are doing it right now. They're in the middle of expanding, and they hope to have a huge amount of output in a couple of years. So I think that's going to be a major thing that we've got going on as well too. And then across the board too, there are a number of different organizations that are working on different programs. Clean Skies for Tomorrow program is a major one where they are working on the different aspects of the supply value chain that I mentioned before. And they're working with feedstocks, they're working with technology providers, and so they're trying to build up, the whole program. And it's very difficult because it's kind of like a chicken and egg with the feedstock providers. They need to provide the feedstocks, but if you don't have an end user wanting to have that, or you don't have a technology provider being able to turn those feedstocks into a renewable jet fuel, then you don't have a good supply value chain. So, and you can't get everybody to just stand up all at once. And so that's the conundrum that we're underneath right now. So these are very critical to have these type of programs being worked across the board, and I think that's very important. So I'll tell you a little bit more than just what has been happening with just World Energy, but now we have Fulcrum Bioenergy that's going to be coming online out in Reno, Nevada. They are using municipal solid waste. They have number 2 planned for Chicagoland area. Gary, Indiana is where they're going to be putting their next one. Then Red Rock, they're out of Lakeview, Oregon, and they're producing about 12 million gallons a year, or will be, hopefully at the beginning of next year. Fulcrum also will be in production by the beginning of next year too. So they're in the middle of building that. I was at the groundbreaking ceremony for both Fulcrum and for Red Rock, and that was a big effort. It's going on, and it's nice to see their progress as they go along. Then Velocis, they have announced a site in Mississippi, and I'll go into a little bit more detail on that one here in a minute. And then Darsanoff Group is working in Texas to try to stand up a couple of things too. So you can see there's a lot of different things that are happening right now just from the Fischer-Tropsch pathway. That's the FT pathway, and they're using in the case with Fulcrum, they're using municipal solid waste. Red Rock is using wood waste, and Velocis, they're also using wood and some municipal solid waste as well too. And then from other pathways, Gevo is in Texas, Silsbee's, Texas, and they have a facility where they're taking isobutanol and ethanol and turning that into jet fuel. And then Lonzatec, as I mentioned, will be opening up a facility in Sopperton, Georgia. And they're using the same pathway basically that Gevo is using. That's the alcohol to jet pathway. And then Shell is also working on a new pathway to try to get going through. And so they're going through the D4054 clearinghouse, and they've been working on that effort since 2018. So there's a pathway to go in order to get that ASTM qualification, and that's that 4054 clearinghouse that's out there. So I want to talk a little bit about potential opportunities. Now, this is for the whole United States, but I wanted to point out, and the reason I have it in red is those woody residues. There's potential for 400 million gallons, 0.4 billion gallons of fuel. Now this is the neat biofuel portion. This is not the blended portion. So when we say neat, that's the unblended portion. Now, in the pathways, specifically for the Fischer-Tropsch pathway, they can go up to a 50-50 blend. And so that's pretty significant. So you could almost get almost 1 billion gallons a year just out of wood waste. if you had the proper facilities out there. And I think that's very, very key to remember as well. So then you see the top two, wet waste and then municipal solid waste as well too. We can get a lot of things going there. Agriculture, I know, is very big in the Southeast. So there certainly is some potential from agricultural residues. Corn stover, sugarcane bagasse, and then regular biomass that you can have from your plants, miscanthus or pennycrust, those kind of things. Then you have fats, oils, and greases. That's the FOG, and in that case, that's the used cooking oil or the beef tallow, those kind of products as well too. So all total, you can see, 15.6 billion gallons is quite a bit. If we're just talking about the United States, that's almost 58% of what the total is. And then when you think about this being the neat biofuel portion, if you were to blend it at 50-50 blends, basically we could have enough if you built out all of the industry that you needed in order to take all these just waste products. That's different than the purpose-grown feedstocks. And when I say purpose-grown, in some cases we have carinata and camelina and pangamia that are their main purpose when you're growing those is to get those oil seeds. In the case with carinata and camelina and pangamia, you crush those, you get a crude oil, and then you can put that through the process just like you would. Instead of using fossil fuel out of the ground, you're actually using that crude oil coming from an oil seed. I think that's pretty important to realize. So this is the project I was telling you about for Velocis. It's in Mississippi, and they're using that woody biomass, and that's going to be a big thing. Right now, I'm not sure, but I think it's going to be in 2022 by the time that gets built. I think they're still trying to raise some funds for that particular one. And then Arkansas is not too far. That's another project that we have for Arkansas using renewable fuels. And in this case, they're also using the forest wood waste products as well too. And I think that's another good aspect. What I'm basically doing is showing you that there are companies that are out there. This is not just I'm not just doing a shell game for you. I'm actually saying that there is actual good production out there. Now, there are some general challenges that we've got to worry about. Excuse me. We do have some policy issues that we need to get, at a federal level. Right now, the low carbon fuel standard program is going on quite well out in California. Washington State is also trying to do their own low carbon fuel program. Oregon's got one. British Columbia and other parts of Canada also have one. And then New York and other states are also trying to get an actual good policy going forward. There is a lot of work on aggregation. You've got to be able to aggregate all the feedstocks. It's a lot different than plugging a hole in the ground and just sucking the crude oil out. When you have to aggregate all these different feedstocks across a large area and get it to a biorefinery for processing, there is a big challenge there, because obviously the hauling, you are going to be moving air, you're going to be moving a lot of different waste products. It's much easier to actually move the liquid fuel. So a lot of cases, we will be developing these biorefineries like in Soperton, Georgia, right next to where that waste product, those wood wastes actually are. So you've got also potential for undergrowth and pine slash, and doing abatement, trying to get rid of that dead material. And in some cases, it's just hasn't really penciled out all the way around. And then, of course, you also have competition from the wood waste side from pellets and then mass burning as well, too. And right now, the challenge is, what's going to happen after COVID, and so that's why we have that. We know that we're not just operating a bubble. We're still trying to work around those kinds of issues and see what's really going to happen on the other end of it. Everybody talks about flattening the curve, and a lot of people think it's just a bell curve. It's going to go up and then it's going to go down. But when it goes down, it's going to be a very gradual glide path, I think, before we get back to normality. So we'll have to see how that actually goes. And then, of course, there's other jeopardies at stake, and other people that are out there, other organizations that are saying, yeah, we just need to stop flying completely. You got a lot of social flight shaming going on. I love Greta Thunberg, but at the same time, she's all about, hey, we need to reduce our carbon emissions coming from aviation, which is true, we do, and we're trying to do what we can. I wish that she, instead of getting on a sailboat, she would have gotten on a plane with sustainable aviation fuel instead. That would have been a really good plug for us, that's for sure. Anyway, so there's a lot of other jeopardies that are there across the board, and so that's why I want to sort of highlight those aspects of it too. So now let's talk about us here in the Southeast. So as I mentioned, across the supply value chain, we have feedstocks, we got technology providers, and then we have off-takers. So I just put up, I did a little bit of brainstorming and tried to figure out what would be the ones that may be appropriate for the Southeast. And once we get done with all of this in a couple of slides, we can go back to this and talk a little bit more about it. But I'm basically letting y'all know that there is a lot of activity that's going on right now in the Southeast. The Applied Research Associates, as part of the technology providers, they're the ones who just got approved Annex 6, the catalytic hydrothermolysis pathway, and that's a really big effort that they did, and so and they were able to blend up to a 50-50 blend. Now, when the military was actually testing that fuel, we were able to test it at 100%, and because I had the proper aromatics on board, and that was a big thing. So if we can actually get rid of using the need for fossil fuel for liquid petroleum, and just be using used cooking oil or beef tallow or some of those others just for that particular pathway, that's a pretty significant aspect of that. And then Sunshine Biofuels, they're in Florida. I heard just yesterday, I think they may be moving to Louisiana, or maybe they're going to be putting up another facility in Louisiana. So that's kind of a cool thing. And then Logitech, I mentioned, is in Sopperton. And then you've got a lot of different regional off-takers. Boeing is right down here in Charleston, and they have actually delivered a couple of aircraft to Etihad Airlines, and they did it with sustainable aviation fuel. So they had sustainable aviation fuel when they took off. After they signed and said, "Yeah, I'll take it," I went to Abu Dhabi on a full tank of sustainable aviation fuel. So that's kind of a cool thing to have that right here going on in the Southeast. So what can we do? What can you do? You can do all of these. It would be great if we could have, more of a discussion on these kinds of things that are happening across the board. We do need to try to attract more technology providers here. We've got to look across the supply value chain, look at those feedstocks, and then overall we need to help spread the word. We need to help educate the public on what's happening, as well as other coordinators across the United States too. There is a big potential for more jobs. Obviously, because of the crisis, a lot of people are out of work, and that's unfortunate. But maybe we can actually be generating some jobs through the sustainable aviation fuel and aviation industry, across the board. So I'm going to leave those questions with you as well too, and then just let you know that, we are here to stay. This path has actually commenced. There are some impediments to growth, but overall, we do feel that we are on the cusp of a very rapid expansion, and we can replicate a lot of the different technologies that are out there, and we just need to get the funding and get them going. Since 2016, when we've had that first flight going on, the actual sustainable aviation fuel and renewable fuel industry, not biodiesel, but renewable fuels, they've been around probably a little bit more than 10 years at a substantial amount. Anyway, that's when a lot of these were first being offered and thought about. So it's a very, very nascent industry. We're just starting out, but I think that we will get there, and we'll be able to build on a really good industry across the board. So thank you very much for your time and attention. I hope I didn't put anybody to sleep, but I'd be glad to answer any questions. There's my contact details. If you want to try to get a hold of me, be glad to do some one-on-ones. I've also gone around to various institutions. I've been to Clemson. I've been to Notre Dame. I've been to South Dakota State University, Cornell, a lot of different organizations. So, I'd be glad to come in and talk to undergraduate and graduate students. Yes, once they get back get back on campus as well too. So at that, I'll leave it to Ben and to Land and Eva to let's answer some questions now.
All right, thank you, Chris. You didn't put me asleep. I thought that was a great presentation.
Good.
As you guys know, most of our focus is on-road transportation, so it's nice to focus on something a little different. And also, I don't know if you want to bring up that regional focus slide again. I think we've got some people on here, in Florida and Georgia and Alabama. Those if you're not already, might be good stakeholders, future stakeholders to reach out to and start making connections with, especially some of those feedstock companies. I think might be good in the biofuels world. But I guess I'll start off. I've got a question, but if anybody else has a question, I guess you guys can just unmute yourselves and ask Chris, since I don't think we have any in the chat box. But every system's kind of different. On-road fleets kind of either buy their fuel and have a private infrastructure, or they if they want to put natural gas in their vehicle, that vehicle is going to run on natural gas. But with airlines, I think we've talked about this before, they might be a little bit different, that how they procure fuel, and that you might not be flying on a plane that has sustainable aviation fuel on it, but it's been offset somewhere by it. So I don't know if you can talk a little bit on how airlines procure fuel and how that works out.
Certainly. No, that's a good question, Ben. So we have a couple of programs that we're starting to do. First of all, when we're doing this, a lot of these demonstration flights, like for instance what Etihad did out of Charleston, in that case they actually did have the sustainable aviation fuel on board in the wing of the aircraft. But in the future, what we see happening is that a company like United Airlines will say, I'm going to buy fuel for all the flights going out of Orlando, Florida. And so they work it out with the actual producer of the fuel. In some cases, they'll be the ones out in California, because that's where they're getting the low carbon fuel standard credits, and they have RIN credits as well too. So they'll book those flights. They'll claim those flights, but those flights will actually be occurring somewhere else. So because they paid for those, that's what we call this book and claim program. It's not fully implemented yet, but that's the gist of it. As you mentioned, it's kind of like an offset. So I will pay for the fuel, but I'm going to fly it somewhere else. The other part of of the offset, the carbon offset reduction scheme for international aviation, CORSIA, that I talked about, that is another one of those situations where people will be, or airlines will be paying for this sustainability, but they're basically paying for a carbon offset. I'm going to pay for this sustainability. It won't be in the terms of an actual gallon of sustainable aviation fuel, but maybe through this program, I'm going to be able to plant 1,000 trees somewhere where they're needed. So you do that kind of carbon offset because you do want, in essence, want to try to offset the carbon that you're burning in those flights that are going out of a particular airport, for instance. So I think, does that help answer your question, Ben?
Yeah, definitely. I think that worked out.
Okay.
Does anybody else have a question on the line? If you do, feel free to unmute yourself. I'll give it a second if anybody does.
Hey Ben, it's Doug in Florida.
Hey Doug.
Hey Chris, thank you for your presentation. This is a topic of particular interest to me. I stayed an extra day at the last year's ACT Expo just to take in a presentation on this topic. And, you know, we have Orlando International, and then Sanford Orlando International, and then Melbourne, Daytona. I mean, we got airports all over the place down here. You know, I'd like to start talking about this with folks, but I don't really know, is this going to be just is it going to be a first discussion, or Chris, or have you been talking to folks down here?
Yeah, I have been talking to some people, Doug, and thanks for the question. I understand where you're coming from. The unfortunate situation is that when you think about how the sustainable aviation fuel is paid for, they're not necessarily paid for by the airports. They're paid for by the airlines.
Right.
The airport is just the vessel through which the fuel transfers, goes from the fuel supplier, goes to a tank, and then goes to the wing of the aircraft. So in those situations, yes, you certainly can talk to the airport, and I would talk to the fuel providers that are there. Mm-hmm. And it may not be somebody who is, it'd be kind of like a subcontract. So in a case in Charleston, I think it's Epic Fuels. In some cases, there's Signature Fuels. There's a lot of different companies out there that are providing those fuels for those particular airports. Mm-hmm. And so that's one way to get your foot in the door, to let them know, hey, it's coming. They may already know about it, but I think the more important thing is to try to work with the actual airlines. So in your case, if you're down in Florida, I don't think there's any, well, Embraer is one of those companies that's actually located down there in the Florida region. You could go talk to Embraer because as they do, just like what Boeing is doing, is they turn around and they provide one of their aircraft. They could provide it with sustainable aviation fuel. Mm-hmm. So they could possibly be buying it from Sunshine Biofuels down in Tampa, Florida, for instance. Okay. So that would be part of the start. Yes, I have been working with the Airports Council International. I have been working with the people in Atlanta. I know the fuel providers there, or actually, should I say the people that's part of the Atlanta Airport Authority that's doing the purchase of the fuels, not the actual Epic or Signature or whoever's providing the fuel itself. Mm-hmm. So if you can, what you could do is go to each of those different airports that you talked about, for instance, Orlando, and go talk to them and say, hey, have y'all thought about doing anything with sustainable aviation fuel? Mm-hmm. And open up the topic, and Yeah, I'd be glad to be a part of those conversations with you, Doug, if you need for me to do that.
Oh yeah, for sure. And Embraer has a manufacturing facility in Melbourne, which is just about 35 minutes from where I am. So,
right.
And Embraer is really Piper Aircraft, right? I mean, or that's what it originally started out as. So,
Yeah, I think so, but yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, they're down in Vero. I don't really remember where their corporate, I think their corporate headquarters are up in the Northeast, but in any event, I think probably what might help, I don't know if you've had a chance to talk with anyone from the city of Orlando.
I have not talked with anybody from Orlando recently.
Okay.
On this particular topic, but again, I'd be glad to do that.
Yeah, I think what we might want to do is have a conversation with Chris Castro, who is the director of sustainability in Orlando. And Orlando is very, very focused on becoming, a leader in these areas. And they work very closely with the airport. So I will work towards setting up a conversation between us and Chris, and we'll get started there and see, where it takes us.
Sure. Yeah.
And I'm probably going to wait a little bit until maybe some of this COVID dies down a little bit, because I just don't think we're going to get the audience for it right now. And even if we did get the audience, I would hate to see, I like to develop momentum, so timing is everything, but I'd like to wait a few months. But no, this really interests me. And I was in a workshop with the city of Orlando and Siemens, who's a partner with them. And we were going through some exercises on how to, what would be the impact and how could we get to the environmental standards that the city has set for itself. And basically what it turned out to, it was going to be really almost impossible for them to get to their goals without some major concessions. But what came out of that was, when we were in that meeting, was I asked Siemens, I said, how come we don't have the airport in these calculations? And they said they didn't have a model at that point. They were working on one, but they didn't have a model that could incorporate the problem that the airport creates. And so, and what's happened too is, 40 years ago when they built that airport, it was out southwest of Orlando or southeast of Orlando, and there was nothing out there. And obviously now it's all growing up. And so I personally think it's going to become an issue.
Sure.
I mean, it already is an issue, but I think there might be some opportunity here for us to kind of start the conversation.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with that. And down there at Disney, I know that Disney Cruise Lines have actually started to use renewable diesel for their cruise ships.
Yeah, so, they have, and their port is right here in Cape Canaveral. It's like 5 minutes from my house.
Oh, is that right? Yeah. Yeah. So just from that perspective alone, maybe there's some other companies that we can use to leverage in order to get Orlando Airport MCO to the table. I think that'd be really cool.
Yeah.
To be able to try to do that.
Yeah, we'll re-engage, and Ben has my contact information, so let's just stay in touch. And I'm deeply involved in something else right now, so I really wouldn't even have the time to open up this discussion and be able to follow up on it, but I would like to in the near future.
Sure. So let me mention one more thing, Doug, before we get on to the next question. Sure. So yeah, right now, because it's COVID, it's a bad situation. But if you think about it too, maybe the people that are working with the Orlando airport, maybe they don't have anything to do because there's no passengers. So maybe it is a good time to go and at least talk to them and say, hey, by the way, once you get up and running again, I just want to let you know what's happening. So that maybe that's the silver lining in the cloud, is to say, well, maybe it is a good time. I don't know.
Okay. All right. Well, and I agree with that observation. So part of that was for self-preservation. I've got too much to do already. So, but anyway, I will be back in touch, and we'll see if we can put something together to start the conversation here in Central Florida.
Sounds good. Thank you, Doug.
Yeah.
Thanks, Doug. Chris, to your point about, free time, we were actually talking with a planner at the Charleston International Airport here in South Carolina, and they, they said, just because the passengers weren't there, they're still busy on, they're taking things out of the back burner that they haven't been working on in a while. And, electrification was a thing that we were talking about. But Karina, I think you had a question you wanted to ask. I saw you unmuted yourself for a second.
I did. Can you hear me all right?
Yep.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure because I was having some technical difficulties earlier this morning. Hi, Chris. I'm Karina Soriano. I'm the co-coordinator for the Central Carolina Clean Fuels Coalition up in Charlotte, North Carolina. And I just had a quick question for you. Great presentation, by the way. I was wondering if you had any maybe like key talking points that could really get the conversation started with airlines in our region.
Talking points, you say? Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. We have. I've got some things I can send to you. We do have some information that's also on our website, CAAFI.org. But yeah,
okay.
I'll specifically send you some things. It's basically what airports would need to know about prior to going in and talking. I'm assuming that you're needing those talking points for airports, or are they more for airlines, or what?
So we would probably be focusing on airlines. We have the Charlotte Douglas International Airport located within our region, but we also have a variety of smaller airports. I don't think they really have the traffic or the airlines, though, to be able to basically support kind of a larger effort, maybe like this. So it'd probably be airport specific, but we've got a variety of airlines at the Charlotte Douglas Airport. So kind of anything that you could send my way would be appreciated, and it looks like a couple others were joining in as well for the talking points. But yeah, anything that you have, we would really appreciate. I know we've had a few planners at the Douglas Airport looking to kind of follow along with the city of Charlotte and their sustainability plan. But I know that there's definitely been some difficulties kind of getting that off the ground, just with implementation, budget, all those sorts of considerations.
Sure. Yeah, no, thank you, Karina. I'd be glad to do that. I do know too, you probably saw in the slides that American Airlines, they have been working actively on trying to get some sustainable aviation fuel too, because obviously with CORSIA coming up, everybody's trying to get in line to say, okay, what am I going to do? So American Airlines is one of those companies. So that's good.
Great, thank you so much, and thanks for your presentation too.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that.
Does anybody else have a question? Give it a second here.
Not a question, but just a comment. This is Landon. Hello, everyone. Told you weren't going to get rid of me. I'm still here, but we can send out and follow up. As follow-up, I think Ben has noted in the chat box, we'll follow up with the presentation, but we'll also send you Chris's contact information directly, and get him the contact information for you guys so that you guys can connect with each other, because it's really good. He's a great resource to start these conversations, and also to just bounce ideas off of. If you have questions, you know, of how to approach these airlines, or what is important, or how does it work, just the basics. He's been a great resource to us to have in that regard. So we'll try to connect you guys, and Ben can follow up with that email with the slides and all the contact information too.
Thanks, Landon. And Chris had mentioned the CAAFI website. I don't know if you guys had explored that yet, but he's right. There's a lot of resources on there. Some of it went a little bit of, way over my head, where, might have to have an engineering degree to understand some things. But, there's a lot of good information. If you want to find out what other organizations are doing, who's involved with CAAFI, who are, the stakeholders and stuff like that, and the history as well of sustainable aviation fuel. It's kind of had a storied history. It's not just something that started in the last year or two. It's been going on for a couple decades. So if you haven't had a chance to swing by his website, I would encourage it. But I wanted to ask, Chris, do you know about VAIL grants, the Voluntary Aviation Low Emission grants from the FAA? Do you know if those could work with sustainable aviation fuels, or is that just for, on-road applications, I guess, at airports?
I do not know the answer to that, Ben. I'm sorry. I'll find out to see if they can be used for SAF. I think that would be great if they could. But
yeah,
I honestly am not sure.
Okay. Yeah, I appreciate that. I know that some airports, I don't think, Columbia here where we're located is a VAIL approved airport, but I think, there's more than a handful of airports within our different coalition areas. If incentives can be used, that's always a plus.
Oh yeah. Yeah. If we can use other people's money, we're always about that, right?
Yeah. So I don't know if anybody else has a question. If you do, feel free to unmute yourself. If not, I don't know if Chris, you have any closing thoughts or anything. The
only closing thoughts that I have, or that other final slide about what we can do. Let's work on it as much as we can. Let's try to get the word out. And by me helping to provide this guide, these talking points, that will help you to educate the people in your area as well as the general public too. So I've got homework to do, and that's fine. But then I'm going to task y'all all to also take that and run with it as well. But yeah, do remember that you can use CAAFI.org as a resource. But use me personally. I'll be glad to help you answer any questions. You don't necessarily have to go through Ben or Landon or Eva. That's fine. Contact me directly. I don't mind. I'll certainly let them know what's happening. But that'd be great. I don't mind doing that at all.
All right, great. And, another good thing is that he's in Charleston, South Carolina. So he's local. He's not, all the way in California or something, and some
That's right.
3-hour time zone difference.
That's right. That's right.
So I just want to thank you again, Chris, for presenting, and I want to thank everyone again for joining. Like Landon said, I'll follow up with Chris's contact information, the slides, and the recording of the presentation with everyone, so we all have it. So just want to thank you guys again. Have a great rest of your afternoon. Keep safe and stay healthy in these times. So thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Ben. Thank you, Landon. Thank you, everybody.
Great job, Chris.
Thank you.